Digital audio health by Symatrax.
Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show with your host, Rhonda Grant. If you believe that there is more to life than what you see right now, and you want to find out more, listen in as her guests share their journey and their extraordinary experiences. Now, here is your host, Rhonda Grant.
Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show. Sometimes the universe has a way of placing people or obstacles in your path to help guide and direct you on your mission. Listen in as we discover the path my guest has traveled. Has he been inspired by a calling, crafted his journey, or a bit of both? I invite you to embrace the conversation and to use it to help you to recognize if this is happening in your life. Our guest today is Dr. Joe Gallenberger, who is a clinical psychologist and expert in psychokinesis, PK, the ability to influence matter using the energy of directed consciousness. He teaches PK, energy healing, and manifestation in workshops, including his Inner Vegas Adventure, Munroe Institute's MC² program, and his SyncCreation home study course. His book, Inner Vegas, Creating Miracles, Abundance, and Health, reveals how mind energized by heart influences our reality. With his liquid luck meditation, people immediately reported success. His book, Liquid Luck, the Good Fortune Handbook, shares these extraordinary stories. He shows us that we can indeed be miracle workers in our own lives. Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show, Joe.
Thank you, Rhonda. My pleasure to be here today with you.
I'm so pleased that you're on the show. Let our audience know a little bit about you and your background.
Well, I've lived in the mountains of North Carolina in the United States. I got a degree in clinical psychology and was a therapist for about 30 years. But I've also worked for over 30 years at Munroe Institute with technology-aided meditation, exploring different states of consciousness. And over that time, I've developed kind of a specialty in the area of manifesting, what we call psychokinesis, energy healing, those type of areas where we're using our high spirit energies to affect things in the physical.
Mm-hmm. And so you're also have trained people in psychokinesis. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so we change psychokinesis usually to the shorthand PK, and it's the same as TK, which is telekinesis. And many people say affecting matter with your mind. I don't like that definition too much. For me, the mind is like the steering wheel of a car. It would set direction, intention of where you want to go, but the car goes nowhere without gas. And the gas we use is the energy of unconditional love as the best fuel, that we move that energy through the heart. And with that are able to affect matter and reality. So what we mean is we get seed growth of 1.5 inches long, roots in 2 minutes, holding seeds in our hand, lighting light bulbs with our energy, rolling Dyson patterns, affecting slot machines, bending metal, like you see the metal bending and spoon bending things sometimes, and both in laboratory settings, and then also, which is often what we call micro PK, they study, and then also things like the metal bending, that would be macro PK. And I've wanted to see how that relates to manifesting things in your life and energy healing, because I think they're the same energies. PK just happens to be easier to study in the lab and give you faster feedback. So if I get in the right energy and I intend to bend the metal spoon, it happens within seconds. Where if in life you want to manifest the best job, it may take a while for that to come together for you. So it's nice to have the fast feedback. And in fact, the fastest feedback I found is the casinos of Las Vegas. So
Yes.
I've done 99 workshops out there where we use dice and slot machines. And we have results like on roulette that were 1.6 billion to one by chance, a couple of 100 million to one by chance on slot machines. So we get good feedback and good verification statistically that we're not just making this all up, that you can affect reality.
Oh, yes. And when I was reading Inner Vegas, I was remembering my days that I was at the casino, and I would notice that I would do really well. And then my husband would come over to see how I was doing, and his energy just seemed to affect the machines. And so it got to the point where I said, "You stay away. I'll come and report to you how I'm doing." Because I had figured it out instinctively that if I had a positive attitude and energy, that I just seemed to do well in the slot machines. And even if somebody beside me was, not being very, they weren't doing well and they were, having attitudes around that or emotions around that, that I'd actually have to leave my machine and go somewhere else. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, Rhonda, I think you're correct. What we do in training, I have a home study course also called SyncCreation to study this at home, but we're aiming for, from a place of feeling like, from my point of view, that we are designed to be unlimited energy beings, getting our energy in unlimited quantity and quality directly from source, however you define that, God or what have you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, most of us don't have that connection, and so we're energy starved and we get our energy from other people instead. And when we do that, then we're vulnerable to be manipulated or affected by their energy. So if a husband or a wife stood by you with negativity, you're hooked into them in a way that it probably will change your chi, if you will, at the
Yes.
machine. But if you were connected directly to source, then either you would change them, they would never show up, they would bounce off if you were there, or they would join you in the very high energy, but you would keep your energy state going. So I wanted not to be able to just heal people when I was in an ashram or something. I wanted to be able to heal people on a subway or on a plane with the crying baby and bad turbulence and half the plane in fear of crashing.
Yes.
So that's one of the things I think that is missing in books like The Secret or the movie is, they talk about visualizing, which is great, but not about what might limit our energy coming into us. And to me, you have to look at your beliefs and your energy pretty strongly. So our cultures say things like nothing good comes easy, no pain, no gain. Then healing cannot be instant if you believe those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of it is, it's a free choice universe, in my opinion, and we are highly creative. But if we're creating through a network of beliefs that are non-enhancing of our full power, or emotions that are non-enhancing, then we're going to have a challenge. So we're aiming at deep gratitude, appreciation, joy, compassion, very high emotional states, as well as very empowering beliefs. And within that, we get these high creative acts that we see in psychokinesis or in healing. Does that make sense, Rhonda?
Well, it certainly does. And I was thinking back to those times and I was thinking he probably lost his $100 and was coming to see how I was. So he might not have had really good energy. And at the time I would have been affected because do you think that it's a growth thing? Like you, as you said, you give courses at the Munroe Institute. And so do you teach people how to protect their energy and to protect it, but also to use it in the best way possible?
Yeah, there would be a level. Some people are very psychic or empathic, and they have not learned basic protection.
Hmm.
Um, the thing that would hook you into people is trying to be the good girl, the good boy, the bad boy, the rescuer, the mess, some role, and that's to get energy, like I mentioned. So part of the protection at a higher level is the best defense is none. You're not really learning protection, but you're
Okay.
in this amazing flow of very high, beautiful energy, nearly continuously. Even if your dog or cat died and you're in grief, you're still in a flow of tremendous love and compassion,
Hmm.
and that's highly protective in and of itself. If you move into fear, then you begin to resonate with other people's lower energies and the culture's lower energies. So,
Oh,
Rhonda, I have a phrase on my wall here says, "Fear is expensive, love is priceless, choose wisely,"
oh,
because I think it's extremely important uh, to not be tempted to move into fear. Some people have said fear is a prayer for what you do not want. And yet, as a culture, where they're whipping up fears a lot for us nowadays. So yes, the Munroe Institute, when I teach up there, as well as my own courses, home study, my
right.
meditations, I have about 8 or 10 download meditations that are about 30 minutes long each. They're designed to relax you quickly through the brainwave technology, open your heart, and move you into high spiritual states quickly, so you're connected with the kinds of energies we're talking about. And you can train yourself that way. And so initially, we may talk about strengthening your aura, forming a
Yes.
wall of energy around you. Some people put that in verbal terms like I surround myself with the white light of Buddha or Christ.
Hmm.
Nothing good can come to me or go from me. Those are verbal descriptions of that boundary. But at the highest level, you're filling yourself with such gratitude and love, and like attracts like, that you tend to attract the your husband coming over to the machine when he's won. And not thinking in his own mind, gee, it's not a good idea to go over right now when I lost. Maybe I should have a cup of coffee or go outside for a while. So
Yeah.
you begin to influence, even without your conscious awareness, of who comes to you and when they come and what mood they're in when they do. Um, and then you're in a place where, you're still interacting with people who are struggling, but from a place where you have amazing compassion and you're
Yes.
solid in your base. So you're not having to rely on primitive philosophies like, well, whatever they are having, they must deserve it, or they
Yeah.
must be karma, or the world is all suffering, and what we need to do is detach, or heaven is somewhere else, or different cultural phrases. But rather, you can see everything and be very present in the present moment and feel things deeply, but from an atmosphere of such compassion flow that you're not rocked by all that cultural drama, if you will.
Hmm. And one of the things that I've heard quite a bit, and I really didn't understand it when I heard, it's a long way from the brain to the heart, and we spend most of our life not in touch with our heart, because our brain is running the show, right? Or the roommate that's your conversation that you're having, with the roommate in your head. And so I don't know. I guess Heart Math teaches it. I have not looked at their courses yet, but I found my heart and the expansiveness of it during meditation.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
So,
there's many roads. People find it through service.
through
So they
service.
may be teaching handicapped children to swim, and
Oh,
as the children meet them the second or third week and hug them around the legs with a big smile or whatever it is, they might find their heart opening. You can go through meditative techniques. What we know from heart math would be there's more connections from the heart to the head than vice versa, that the heart perceives things faster than the head, it looks like. So if danger is there or other things, we can see the heart react faster than the mind. The meditations that we are using now, rather than 20 years in an ashram, in 15, 20 minutes, it can help the brain move into a left and right brain balance state.
Right.
That state, it's a lot easier to move from there into the heart energy than if you're strongly left brain functioning. That can be there. People move into the heart through the body as well. So sports people will talk about being in the zone.
Yes.
The appreciation of beauty, walking out and seeing the Grand Canyon or a beautiful waterfall. So, but the culture is based a lot on survival of the fittest. And that's no longer accurate. What we know in biology, because of the genetic sharing between organisms, is that nature's prime directive is really for the good of all. It's not the survival of the fittest. And but if you move and create a culture survival of the fittest, it triggers those threat systems that tend to put you into brain and put you into left brain and to fear. So we're at a point where we're changing that around a bit. And people that are very, traveling between worlds, like Bob Monroe, who founded the Munroe Institute.
Yes.
He valued the left brain very strongly. There's many places in the universe where our ability to count and do contrasts and polarities and all these left brain things is considered amazing magic. Okay.
Yes.
And to navigate through the limits of the illusions of time and space. That said, we're at a place now where, yes, that can still be valued, and yet you can bring in the amazing power of the heart, and they can work and dance well together. So we're not looking at becoming all just airy-fairy or fuzzy-wuzzy as different places. That way, snowflake is a United States phrase for some of that in a pejorative way, but rather very discerning, very much attuned to reality, but at the same time, seeing the joy of our own creativity and seeing the power of our heart.
Mm-hmm. And, you said something that always makes me smile is magic. And I remember as a young one, really believing in magic. And I remember losing something and asking God to please help me find it. I can't remember what it was. It might not have been I might have had something that wasn't mine and I lost it by mistake and was asking for it back. And by magic, it appeared. I just looked and looked again and I found it. But as people grow older, they lose that. They lose the fact that there is magic out there. And the older I got, and after my near-death experience, I have come into a realization that there is magic. And in reading your material, it's quite evident that there's magic, and I think that we have to, and well, as in the Bible, it says we as come to God as children, like that sort of innocence that there is magic and there is all of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's,
And so when you were having groups of people go to Vegas and you're beating odds that should never have happened, did you feel that you were in that state of magic, or what did that feel like?
Yeah, it feels like a sacred space,
Yes.
both in the scientific lab at university and in the casinos, and at Monroe, wherever you are, becomes enlivened and glowing. For me, I could see through physical matter, could hear angelic choirs singing in the background when nobody was singing, quote, in the physical.
Right.
Lots of different things, what we would call time distortions, where it would seem that dice would be rolled on top of the table, just rolling over slowly, and I could go to the bathroom, come back, they'd still be in the air, kind of a feeling.
Yes.
And with that, then in the thy will be done way, to be able to create exactly what you wanted. Spontaneously, along with the wins on slots or dice, we're having people wake up second day of the workshop, pain-free from post-polio syndrome for the first time in 20 years. People, would be tearful the second morning, saying, for the first time in decades, I have no fibromyalgia pain. So we're getting interesting healings that way. A fella whose nails on his feet were all yellowed with foot fungus, waking up the next day, his nails completely clear, not just starting to grow clear. So we see that magic and miracle. And my stance, Rhonda, is we're surrounded by a miracle. If you look at the miracle of the human hand and everything it can do, from brain surgery to flipping the bird, from sublime to ridiculous, if you feel like you're surrounded by miracle all the time, then some of these things on slot machines or body healing are just another miracle, if you will. So it's a different context to thinking that we're 98 cents worth of chemicals and there's no magic left in the world. And we're all operating out of greed and trying to survive. That's a pretty low level definition of life. It allows people in power to sell us something to control certain situations. But as adults now, we can reprogram, if you will. You mentioned having magic as a kid, kind of losing it, getting it back in near-death experience. And many people have that journey. Something will come along. Doesn't have to be near death. It can be other things.
Yes.
Going into retirement, having somebody else have a health crisis, who knows? But it brings them back in touch with how much more they are than their physical bodies, and the magic begins to activate again. And so we see a lot of people at Munroe Institute who come back in their 40s, 50s, 60s, who say, I've kind of raised my family, made my money, or whatever, but now what else is really here? And they begin to discover all this magical area, if you will.
It's just fascinating. Why do you think that people had changed overnight and had a healing? Do you believe it's because during the activity at throwing dice that they were vibrating at such a high level that healing took place? Because I know that there is like Reiki and things like that help people to heal parts of their body. Do you think it was that? Like, what would have it been?
The high energy is definitely our part. What happens is the dice are very good at a couple of things, because we have money out there. People really pay attention. And it might even be 50 cents, but if it's your money or whatever you're doing is going to affect other people's money, people are very motivated to pay attention and to be kind of more impeccable. So when I say, okay, I want you to open your hearts and move into gratitude, ground to the earth strongly, be in the present moment, be one with all, and be connected to spirit. When we move into that, the dice roll beautifully and we get rewarded with money. If you go into greed, fear, ego, the money gets withdrawn. So that's the feedback system. And within that expansion, I think it allows the opening for a miracle to come in more easily, because people are feeling deserving. They're vibrating at a higher level where their channels, if you will, are more open. And then, Rhonda, for me, illness is mysterious. One person headache may go away and the other person's may not. And that doesn't mean one person's more deserving than the other, or are more intelligent or trying harder or wants it more, but it's more appropriate in their spiritual path right now for that headache to stay or to go away, for them to learn what they're learning as a spirit and body, or the people around them. So some people are carrying very heavy loads as they're healing generations forward and backward in their tribal trauma systems. And they've unconsciously selected to do that or consciously selected to do that. And so something may remain longer than for another person. And so we have to have great humility and respect. I use my mom as an example. She was very bright lady, could do New York Times crossword puzzle in ink. And the one thing she didn't want to do was to become lose her mind and lose her memory. And she ended up doing that. She was in rest home with Alzheimer's. And when she died, I met her on the other side and said, "Mom, what was the Alzheimer's about?" And she said, "Well, my dad and I, we'd been married 64 years and he was going to needed to be around for a long time after I leave. And so if I died suddenly, it would have been too much of a shock. He needed time to learn how to cook and clean, meet new friends, and do all these things without me. And I couldn't figure a way to get rid of all my religious guilt. So I decided to forget everything." And she went on for a half hour on how Alzheimer's is a beautiful plan for her from a spiritual perspective. So when we look at somebody else's struggles or our own, we got to be humble, and we're not quite sure. But when it's ready, that energy, like in Vegas, will move it. And we can have some shifts. If you are sending energy to somebody with Alzheimer's, the most appropriate thing could be to reduce their fear so they could exit. It could be to clear their minds for clarity for a day or two, to say what they needed to say to some people before they left. It could be that there were many different things happening, and we don't know exactly what's best for anyone, including ourselves sometimes.
Yes.
But these high energy states, as you mentioned, I think your intuition's right, are often associated with shifts psychologically, spiritually, and physically.
Yes.
And so we've had people with near-death experiences that have cancer all the way through their body, and the doctors are saying they only have hours to live, and they come back and they spontaneously heal within a matter of days. That doesn't make them better than the person who exits through the cancer as it looked like they might. Even yogis and the highest spiritual people do die, it looks like, and they often die of something like cancer. One has to be a little careful because our culture is such a meritocracy myth. So if you have money, you must be better than the person who doesn't. If you have health, you must be better than the person who doesn't. And it sure doesn't look like that's what's really going on from my point of view.
Do you feel, or do you believe that our spirits have made arrangements ahead of time with how we will die and when we will die?
I don't know this. This is my suspicion that there is a large variety of conscious awareness as you're planning a life. Some people are very addicted to something in the physical, like to get revenge or to come back because they're so defined with the body that they don't listen to much advice and they dive back in almost addicted to the physical experience. Other people take a good bit of time listening to counseling, if you will, and deciding how their life will go. The folks with more conscious awareness, they may plan 2 or 3 exit points in a life, maybe even more, where if it's not going the way they expected, this could be a place they could exit. And I've had a few what I call near-death experiences where I've been hit on a motorcycle, could see the body flopping in the street, and the head injury was pretty rough. And so that could have been an exit point. I got stung by bees 20 years later and went into anaphylactic shock. That could have been an exit point. But you still have that free choice at the moment. You can say, yeah, I'll stay or go. A lot of people with near-death experiences will report something where they're going and they feel great about being out of the body, and they're meeting with a high energy saying, no, I think you're going to stay, or let's discuss, you have an option to go back, and this is how it would be like if you go back. And this is what might be accomplished, and then they make a decision. In my own experience, say with the motorcycle, I finally figured out that big angelic being that was there with me saying, let's go back, was me from the future about 20, 40 years. And that I met in my meditative space up at Monroe. And so that was just my 21-year-old self's interpretation of my 50-year-old self, if you will, coming back to help me move forward. And I always think our future selves are one of our best guides, because nobody else is more invested in us getting it right than the person who's got to live with it. So that would be our future self.
Well, our souls have a journey, and our souls know where we're supposed to be headed and are nudging us along the way, I imagine. Do you think that's what it is, or?
Yeah, I think best I know, every drop of physical experience is
Yes.
treasured, even if it seems ghastly from an earth perspective,
Okay.
and that all roads lead to light. I had a brother who committed suicide. One of the books I've written, you did not mention, is called Heaven is for Healing, looking at his journey on the other side of the last 30 years after he suicided and how healing is accomplished there. I talked to one of the people I think is most psychic in the world the other day, and she and I were laughing. She thinks when we're on the other side, we must be drunk or something, because we seem to be in such euphoric states that we sometimes pile on a little too much for one individual physical life. And so we'll say, yeah, just load me up, with all my issues, all my growth. I want to grow very fast, and I want to handle everything at once, as opposed to the patience of being an immortal being living many, many lives. And so sometimes we come a little loaded for bear in terms of how much we put on our plate. That's challenging, I think. And then we may say, okay, after all of that, the next time I just want to be a dirt poor fisherman on the coast somewhere with a boat only big enough for myself. It doesn't matter if it leaks, but I want a simple life where I can be happy. And we may have a life like that to kind of rest up a little bit. So I think some of it is planned, but we always have free choice. We can change contracts. We can shift the time we may have thought this would be our exit point, depending on circumstances, because the person in body, when we're in body, even if we have a higher self with hundreds of lives, if we have angels watching, whatever it is, I think even if you want to use the term God, there's deep respect for us in our choicefulness while we're in physical embodiment here, as well as deep respect for any choice we make in spirit. And so we can choose to be pretty stupid and to, be driving tired and not see the child as they cross the street in front of us, and the child gets hit and we have to deal with the consequences lifelong. So, we're making choices continually as human beings with limited information. With my daughters, I had 3 of them. If they said, Dad, can I go to the party? I don't know if when they're in the party, they're going to get hurt in some very bad way, or if they don't go. And so I make it a choice, and then I got to live with it. Sometimes even harder to live with the choices we make for others when they're children, their own choices. Yeah. So I give people like 1,000 points just becoming human. It takes great courage to be here, making choices with limited information. But if we move into these states of love flow we've talked about today, to me, usually what will happen is life gets to be much more like a paradise on earth for us individually here. And our compassion opens, and we're much more powerfully able to positively influence folks where it doesn't seem to be going so well on the surface.
just a wonderful conversation. It's not an easy conversation that we're having, but it's just wonderful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
When you spoke about meeting your mom,
Mm-hmm.
when she had passed, was that a soul to soul meeting, a spirit to spirit? Did you leave your body to do that? What was that like?
There are terrific differences. Like my brother usually doesn't like to appear in body, his old body. He's more of a highest essence to highest essence.
Okay.
My mother, given she had just died an hour or two beforehand, it was very much like meeting her with her perception of her being in a tender, loving care hospital type facility of great light, but laying down and resting. The first thing, sometimes I'll hear from her like it was a landline phone clear in your head going, oh, your dad's going to die soon. And it's no big deal. Before my dad died, an announcement by her. Other times I would feel like I've left my physical body here. The night she died, I felt I was here in my body. I put on some meditation music and lit a candle and felt her presence was with me, or her and I were both in the same vibratory state, if you will, when I had that conversation about the Alzheimer's. And other times within that, say, all of a sudden I felt the radiation of her father come in and the amazing love that they had, and was kind of blown away by the love they felt with each other. And then another part of me was a little boy saying, just lost my mommy. and calling in my own angels to kind of console me.
Right.
So part of me would be in ecstasy, part of me would be in bereavement and grief. So it gets pretty complicated, I think. We're fairly multidimensional, and so a lot of people coming through Monroe become aware of themselves in 5 different dimensions at one time. In body very strongly, at the same time another part out of body healing somebody on another continent or in another time space place. Question of where am I gets to be complicated.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for talking about that, because it is, there is a lot of different ways that we can feel spirit and feel others. And sometimes we question it because we're not quite sure that what it is. And what I ended up doing, and I don't know if you do this, Joe, is I write in a journal when I get a feeling that something that I feel is coming over me that's going to happen. And I keep track of it because, and it used to be, be once a week, and now it's a few times a day. And so I always have my journal open. So yes, I've got to write that down because I want to know what the outcome is. And all of these things can be different, come to you in a different way. And so I'm really glad that you talked about that, because not a lot of people talk about that. And people who are gifted like you are and have these special abilities, there's hardly anybody to talk to about them, because there's a lot of people that don't have them and say, oh yeah, once or twice I've had some intuition. But it is really difficult to find a group of same minds that you can say, I've had this experience. And find out if they did. It serves as a confirmation to keep your feet on the ground, because it's really easy not stay grounded when you're having these types of feelings. You're listening to the Rhonda Grant Show right now, whose podcast has been treated with digital audio health by my sponsor, Psychologist. And I'm speaking today with Joe Gallenberger. How many people reach out to you and connect with you, especially with these courses that you're giving?
Oh, thank you, Rhonda. Yeah, one easy way is just to Google Liquid Luck, which is the name of one of my books. And my books and my website will come up. The website itself is actually a little bit of a complicated word. It's called SyncCreation, which is like the word synchronize, SYNC, and then the word creation, CREATION. So two C's in the middle, syncCreation.com. That will take you to my main website. And on top there's my home study course by the same name, SyncCreation. There's the workshops and a tab for products with these other meditations and books. I've written the book Inner Vegas, the book Liquid Luck, the book Heaven is for Healing, and they're available on Audible and Kindle, as well as written in Amazon. And on my website, you can get, the signed copies. The home study course, SyncCreation, I have them. I'm really pleased to announce 2 weeks ago it came out in a digital version. So we've sold 50 of them in the last week or two to Kuala Lumpur and Singapore and El Salvador, Saudi Arabia, all through Europe, places where people were not looking forward to having me have to mail them something. But the classic version of SyncCreation is still available as well. So on the website to SyncCreation is a lot of free articles under previous articles about how to do psychokinesis and energy healing, manifestation work from the kind of perspectives we're mentioning, because I really like to get the word out. When people say, well, where do you start? That's a lot of stuff. The Liquid Luck book and CD are a good place to start to give you an idea meditatively what you can do. So Liquid Luck meditation, it's about 35 minutes long. You put on some headphones, and people doing that reported winning lottos 3 weeks in a row, selling houses, inventions, soulmates, all kinds of good things. And so we wrote the book Liquid Luck about that. So that can be a cheap place to start, under $20. It's the Liquid Luck download, if you will. And if you want to go to the things more extensively, then look at the home study course.
Wonderful. Do you feel that you've been called to what you're doing?
Yeah, I think from my experience, being called to come to the planet, to experience depression myself for a couple decades, to the kind of work I'm going to do. And then initially thought I would work in the human potential movement, decided, let me get my PhD first, then came back to work back in human potential. And so there's these big circles. And usually when I'm in line with what I'm called to do at the moment, the experiences around will nurture that. So I'm very happy, feel like I've kind of fulfilled my purpose. I get people from around the world writing me every week saying one of my books has touched them in some way. And that's real satisfying. And so, I would call it a avocation, I guess is the word, as much as a vocation to be in this kind of work.
Wonderful. And what extraordinary discovery have you found?
Tons, I guess.
Yes.
I was really surprised, probably at 7 or 8 years old, I'd just become one with everything, a point of conscious awareness, and be in an ecstasy state. I didn't tell anybody but I was being raised Catholic, so I read all about the Christian mystics and stuff. Tried to find a monastery, found one that would take me at 14 years old, so spent 2 years in a monastery. And I've been continuing over all these years to marvel at the resilience of the human spirit and the amazingness of who we are as humans when we move into love, when we move away from fear. And now I'm blessed with 4 grandkids, and I get to see them coming before they lose that ability to believe in magic. They're all under 6 years old, I think, now. And I have real good feelings about our future, because I think we're going to get it together and reduce fear and really make this the kind of paradise it can be, this beautiful planet Earth.
Yes. And when you speak about your grandchildren and saying that they're under 6 years of age, there is a time when I think it is when they go to school that they start losing that sort of ability, because they start being conditioned, right? when you go to school,
Mhm.
your courses and everything.
There's
Do you know?
there's a little bit there.
Yes.
Like, they may say, Johnny, color in the lines. You'll never be an artist. And Johnny is way beyond needing lines. So those kind of things, crimp our chi, using that word again. What we do find is early adolescence, a lot of the psychic ability for many people does shift and go underground. The Chinese have studied this a lot, where they have very empowering schools for kids, and the kids can have things float across the room and disappear, reappear, do a lot of the psychokinesis we've talked about. But when they hit the hormonal surges of pre-puberty, often that begins to diminish for many of us. And then there can be a reactivation, as we mentioned, with some adult things such as near-death experiences or having children, or different things that reactivate us. So it does seem like it can be a challenge to just keep that all lifelong, to keep that child going. And some of us accomplish that. There's a lady, I think her name is Helen Hartzell. She seems to win every contest she's ever.
Yeah, Helen Hartzell, yes.
Yeah, she's still on, she's got a few old YouTube videos of her in her 70s. And you can see how ebullient she is and how filled with joy and love and gratitude.
Okay.
And she just keeps winning and winning. So she takes people with her who need a new refrigerator or whatever onto the contest. So some people keep that, quote, childlike nature. But most of us, we have to scratch a little under the surface to see it.
Yeah, we go away from it and then find our way back sometimes, right?
Yeah, my dad, in his 90s, he said, those 74-year-olds are just pups. They don't know anything. He, in his experience, after being a New York City executive, it seemed to come back a bit when he was able to slow down and get out of the earning a living or raising 5 kids, as my mom did, or those kind of things. And some people, they can hear a song on the radio and it can touch them.
Mm-hmm.
They can go and see the beauty of a waterfall. They can hold a kitten. A number of ways that softness of being human is reactivated. And hopefully when they do, that's supported by those around them, the more vulnerable part of us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Joe, for being on my show. I knew that this was going to be a magnificent conversation, and it's just been wonderful to be in your presence. And I'm going to check out your programs, because I like to learn as much as I can about the subject, because then I learn more about myself and the feelings that I have.
Good. Well, thank you for having me on, Rhonda, and it's been my pleasure. I hope it helps a lot of people just listening to us chat today and feeling the energy.
Yes, I bet you that it does. Thank you so much. Theme song for the Rhonda Grant Show is Sun on the Water, composed and performed by my friend John Park Wheeler. This is Rhonda Grant with the Rhonda Grant Show, author of Magical Forces Within, Extraordinary Discoveries in an Ordinary Life, inviting you to look for the magical forces within yourself today and every day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rhonda Grant Show with your host, Rhonda Grant. If you would like to find out more information about Rhonda and her upcoming guests and the work that she does, go to her website, rhondagrantauthor.com. That's rhondagrantauthor.com.
Digital Audio Health by Psychokinesis.